Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast.
Each episode, we invite extraordinary guests who are masters of their craft. They're innovators, entrepreneurs, and of course, motorcycle enthusiasts who have made their mark in the world.
They share their stories, insights, and hard-earned wisdom, giving you a front row seat to the strategies and experiences that shape their successes.
So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for an exhilarating ride as we dive deep into the minds of these exceptional individuals.
Along the way, we'll uncover powerful strategies, gain fresh perspectives, and explore the limitless possibilities of what it takes to be an American mastermind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast. I am your host tonight, Topher Sheeler. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jared Bayless. Woo. As per usual, we got Alec Langdon up on the soundboard. Love to see his hand over there. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very special evening. I am very much looking forward to this. Jared has spoken a ton of high remarks about these two. We have Brad and Tiffany Lancaster from Flipping for Real. And guys, I am very excited to have you guys here. Jared, tell us how you kind of got into this course and how you met Brad and Tiffany.
Well, my wife, Danielle, is an agent, and she's had some interactions with you guys. She introduced me to their course. They offered a Flipping for Real boot camp, and we did a 4-week a boot camp about flipping houses. So lots of great information, and I thought it was really put together well. So
thanks.
Congratulations on
Thank you.
launching that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what drives your urge to share all your knowledge, and let's talk about why you wanted to do this course.
So, flipping houses has been life-changing for us, honestly. There's a whole backstory that I'm sure we'll get into, but in a nutshell, basically, we came from just terrible divorces where we were starting over from nothing. And we started dating, got married, and flipping houses, I don't want to say we fell into it, but we kind of fell into it. And it was we rebuilt our lives, and we're able to make a lot of money and do it with literally we had no money. We were rebuilding our lives completely, and flipping houses completely not just saved us, but we were able to build a pretty amazing life and live a life of freedom,
Oh yeah.
And
It's important to have that purpose.
yeah, and it just did so much for us that we came to this place where we're we really need to teach other people how to do this, because neither of us really have ever had. I mean, I've had 9-to-5 jobs, but more bartending and side gig type stuff where
Not traditional.
Yeah. And there's this sense of being able to run your own business and be in charge of your own livelihood, being able, this sense of empowerment that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you know how to go out and generate massive amounts of income, and you don't have to have a lot of money to do it. So we just felt a purpose to be able to share that.
We felt called. We also had hit a point where we'd been producing, running a business for ourselves and our family for a long time, for a decade, and we were reaching burnout, and we're losing purpose. We're losing passion.
Yes.
Making money was just, and even that was getting difficult. Things were getting difficult, and we realized, okay, if we're gonna grow, if we're gonna go to the next level, it can't just be about us and our needs. We have to go to a higher level of contribution, higher level of connection, and for us, that means we need to bring other people along this time.
And that transitionary period can be difficult, right? You go from producing and just taking care of your own needs to okay, how do we sustain our income but start sharing this with other people as well?
That's amazing.
Was it the way that you're talking, was this in part a spiritual journey as well?
100%.
For sure.
Very
100%,
spiritual
for
journey.
sure.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a very in-depth question.
So, so Flipping for Real is we started that name 7 years ago, maybe. Our son was in high school, and he was doing classes on video, like videography and stuff like that. And he was incredibly talented, still is. And I wanted to start documenting. I was really sick of the HGTV.
There was a show that came out. The guys were specifically from Utah, and we were going to the auctions at the time.
The trustee sales.
And we started recognizing that they were like totally making stuff up about, like, they were staging the houses, like rolling up Tootsie Rolls and calling it the cat poop house, when we would go and see that house earlier that day and there was no cat poop in the house. But we're like, why not be authentic? It's like, why do we have to fake all this stuff? Like,
it's a good story. Like, the truth is a good story.
Yeah.
And so,
but it wasn't good enough for their
make it
network that they were on. Yeah, it needed to be
Interesting TV.
sensational. It
Right.
needed the bombs exploding, all of that stuff. They even at one point they staged a scene with the cop showing up to pick up a dead body. The cop that showed up to pick up the dead body is a friend of mine, and he was not wearing his cop uniform. He was wearing a costume uniform.
What?
Like, he was missing, the SLPD stuff, and he's a friend of mine, and I'm like, dude, everybody can sell out. I mean, he was acting, and because there was no dead body in this house. I had been in it earlier that day, and I was like, okay, let's just tell the story as it really goes on. Like, I want to talk about flipping for real, like what this really is. I mean, it's a hard business as it is. It's a fun business, but we don't have to sensationalize it. We don't have to lie about it. And so we started making YouTube videos, and we didn't really do much with it, candidly. We
had a YouTube channel, and we would make just fun videos because our son was into like making videos, and we're like, yeah, sure, like come along and film us, and it'll be fun.
And we've still got some of those, and I'm actually rebuilding that channel right now to pull some of that, bring some of that stuff back, and then also just keep telling the story as it's progressing right now.
But that doesn't really speak to the
spiritual journey. Thank you. Thank you.
That's okay.
But okay, so we have to go really deep into because there's some
origin story stuff.
Origin story.
When
Yeah. That's what we're
you're
looking
on
for.
that,
Let's go there.
when
Yeah.
you're on that journey, there's always the big thing that has to happen, right? I think I ought to let Brad start with that, because ultimately it's a lot of it's his story.
Well, it's our story.
Type in where I need to.
So prior to the last real estate crash, I was a real estate agent, broker, owner. Did some developing, did some flipping, and was kind of a big shot for a 37-year-old guy. I had made a lot of money, but I was running a really sloppy business. And on the surface, it looked like it was very profitable. But when 2008 hit and the 2009 hit, it was all exposed. Like, I was running a really sloppy business, and I was in debt. Because I owned a lot of developments. I was a partner and operator in several developments that weren't going well and didn't go well, and ended up getting foreclosed. I ended up losing millions of dollars.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And in 2009, 2010, technically I hit rock bottom, but in 2009, I went through a really nasty divorce. And in part because I decided I'm going to stop living this lie, and I'm going to get really honest about everything. And it wasn't just a bad business. I was being an unfaithful husband. I was not being a good man. And I just decided I'm tired of carrying this weight of being a really shitty person.
Yes.
And so I got really honest about it, and honestly, I lost everything. I lost marriage for a while, lost my relationship with my 4 kids, lost community, lost my religion, lost everything. And in the process, lost my relationship with God. Just decided there is no God. And I was praying, and nothing was happening. And anyways, in 2010, I was working at a bar in Tooele. I was at rock bottom. And I was gifted one of my first angels, Tiffany. She met me. She was working at the bar. We were both working. I was working as a bouncer. I was a habitual drug user at the time, drinking in excess.
He had just started dabbling because he was
She says
Mormon
that, but
before
I was-
then.
I was going down the road.
Hey,
He
listen,
was.
when it crashes, it crashes.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, exactly. And I had a 6-month use cycle going, and I met her, and we just developed a friendship. She was going through a really bad divorce as well. And the first day she met me, she said, "Hey, Brad, I hear you're going through a divorce, and we should get to know each other. Like, maybe we can share war
one
stories."
of the other bartenders, because my divorce was really ugly. We'll go into the details later, maybe, but it was really bad. My ex-husband was fighting me on everything. He was abusive. It was an abusive relationship, and like even trying to get divorced, it was just like every little thing he was making difficult. I ended up having to leave my house. It was a nightmare. And one of the other bartenders, because I actually had been on maternity leave and hadn't been working at the bar for a little while, he started working there while I was on maternity leave. So I ended up staying with my ex-husband because I got pregnant. And anyway, had the baby, came back. We were still trying to make it work, and it just wasn't. One of the other bartenders said to me, you should really talk to Brad because you guys are going through very similar things with your divorce. And I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't really know who he was. I noticed he was working there, but so I was a bartender. He was bar backing and doing security, and he was assigned to be my bar back this night that we were working together. So I figured, oh, well, good opportunity for me to get to know him, because it was one of the bars that was like not very busy, you know, especially early in the night. So I said to him, so Brad, I hear that you're going through an ugly divorce too. Like, tell me about it. What's going on? And he said to me, he goes, yeah. I said, well, like, what happened? What'd you do? And he goes, cheated on my wife and lost millions of dollars. And I was like, oh.
Oh, just that. No big deal.
And I kind of took it as like I didn't know how to take it, because it was almost like he was being cold and didn't really want to talk to me, So I'm like, okay, well, all right. Like, I don't know how to take that, but okay. And I was like, but did you really do that? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Man.
I
commend the honesty.
Well, that's where I was at, because I was in a relationship where like my ex-husband was taking zero accountability for anything that he was doing, and here's this guy that was like, no, it was all my fault. Yeah, I did it all. And I was just I was intrigued by that, because I was like, but I didn't know.
Extreme ownership. Huh?
Yeah. I didn't know at the same time if that was him just like trying to say it, and it kind of was like, I'm a bad dude, stay away, type vibe to it. But
yeah, so anyway, she talked to me, and she wanted to hear, and I was very honest with her. This is the journey I'm on. And we started hanging out. She had separated from her husband and filed for divorce. She went through mediation, and on the day that the mediation was signed and the divorce was signed, that was our first date.
Oh, wow.
And so and then there's a whole other story, but we got married in 2012. So that was in 2010. We got married in 2012. I was still battling for custody of my kids. Was not seeing them, wasn't getting my time with my kids, and I was still trying to be a dad. And
his divorce was like super quick. He was excommunicated from the church like super quick. He had a divorce decree. And there were these funny things, because we ended up moving in together, and in his divorce decree, it actually said that his kids could not spend the night if he was cohabitating with somebody of the opposite sex.
Oh, jeez.
So, and initially when I first got divorced, I'm like, I'm never getting married again. Just not doing that. Like, we can be together, we can live together. Like, I'm just not signing that dotted line ever again. But after seeing what he was going through, he was, I don't want to say a hurt puppy, because he wasn't a victim, but
I was suffering.
There was, so his ex-father-in-law is an attorney who invested into these developments that he ended up losing money in 2008. Oh. And he was very revengeful. So they were all still coming at him hard, and especially when he started dating me. Like, they were ruthless. And basically when we moved in together, all communication with his kids was like cut off. So I didn't feel okay with that, and I ended up saying to him, like, look, if all it means is we have to get married so that your kids can come sleep at our house and you get to have a relationship with them, like, let's do it. Wow. Our relationship was like strong at the time. Like I wasn't worried about that. Like I knew who he was. He was accountable. He was honest. He was amazing, you know? So we did end up getting married, and they weren't a part of the wedding. They didn't even come to the wedding. They wouldn't be a part of any of the engagement pictures. We tried to plan, you know, all this out, and it was really painful. It was tough. And we thought that once we got married, there would be nothing that they could do to like keep the kids from him. But it continued after we got married. We would still drive out to Sandy 45 minutes every other weekend to try to pick up his kids, and we'd come home with an empty car. Oh. And it really sucked. So eventually I was like, you know what, this is bullshit. Because my ex-husband, who, you know, was truly screwing up in a lot of ways, he ended up fighting me for 50-50 custody and got it. And then to top it off, after he got the 50-50 custody, he stopped coming to get the kids and like never paid child support. He paid one child support payment and then like disappeared.
Oh my goodness.
So we're dealing with these opposite ends of the spectrum here.
A guy who wants to be a father.
Right.
And not given the privilege. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, it was tough. And so so we filed an order to, and eventually won an order to show cause. And that resolved a lot of the, like we got the kids were ordered to come with me.
Well, and there's this moment that happened when we did it, because I was insistent. I'm like, you already have the divorce decree that says what your parent time should be. Like, this is bullcrap. We need to go file this. So we do. And he was hesitant to do it. And at the time, I didn't really understand why. I'm like, you got to fight them. Like, this is wrong, you know? And we're at the courthouse, and I remember him looking at me, and he's like, I need you to understand that this is going to open up a big can of worms. And I'm like, so what? I'm not scared. Like, this is bullshit. This is wrong. You know, justice is just. Right. We're going to do this. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. Like, this is your kids. They need to know that you fought for them, you know? Yeah. So we do it. And I don't remember.
It was about 6 months later. I was actually charged with multiple felony counts. So I had, my ex-father-in-law had lost a lot of money in real estate, and I had acknowledged to him and, at one point to the Cottonwood Heights Police Department that I had made mistakes. And not only had I made mistakes, I tried to cover them up. And one of the things that I had done to cover it up was sign a note and a trust deed, which is a security instrument, like a loan document, in my ex-wife's name. And I signed her name because she refused to sign it when we were married. And I signed it. Oh, no. And it was brought to the police department, and they called me in. Like, we were together at the time, and I went in, and they said, your ex-wife is saying this isn't her signature. And I said, yeah, it's not. It's mine. Like, I said, yeah, that's mine. I did that. And so that was the one thing. But
at the time when he was interviewed by Cottonwood Police Department, they were like, or Cottonwood Heights, they were like, okay, whatever. At the time,
that was in 2010.
They didn't see that there was anything to pursue there. It was like, whatever, you know.
So in 2013, I was charged with multiple felony accounts, and my ex-father-in-law actually did a masterful job of putting together a really good case against me. Got a couple of former investors to join in with him.
He actually obsessed about it. In the meantime, like Brad's kids were living with him in his house, in his basement, while he's putting together. It was a 3 or 4 year process. We were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend him. And, you know, he's an attorney. He's not paying any attorney's fees. And he literally like obsessed about it and was determined to put this court case together to try to put Brad behind bars. That was his only motive.
Oh, man.
And so in 2016, after 3 years, it was a 3-year battle, I pled guilty to a third-degree felony. It's called communications fraud, which is basically if you've ever lied in the course of business. It's kind of just a broad, sweeping thing for the Utah Attorney General.
Yeah, so even though his attorney calls us, and, you know, the whole time I'm naive. I'm like, no, the truth is going to come out. They're going to see he's crazy. Like, I wasn't even really that worried about it. I was pissed about how much money we were having to spend to defend him on it.
Justifiably.
Yeah. But I was just like, this is ridiculous. You know, there's no way that.
Well, not just pissed at them. Like, there was a lot. I mean, this was a lot of relationship work going on In fact, when I got charged, this was like one of the most pivotal moments of our relationship. When I got charged in 2013, I was ironically at the courthouse, at the Matheson Courthouse on State Street, because I was at an auction, at a foreclosure sale, and that's where they hold them in Salt Lake for the most part. I was there, and my sister called me from Chicago, or no, I forget where she was living at the time, California maybe, and she's like, "Hey, Brad, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm great." And I was like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, I just heard you got charged with felony charges." And I was like, "What?" And I looked it up, and I could pick up my charging papers right there. And so I went to the courthouse where I was at, walked on the other side, picked up my charging papers, looked at them, and at that moment, my heart's gone.
Oh, yeah.
He calls me. I was pregnant with the 10-year-old I was talking about earlier. I was pregnant.
And I called her up and I said, "Hey, it happened. What I told you, worst case scenario, it happened." And I told her what I read it all, and I said, "So this isn't good."
So one of the strategies that attorneys do is to try to build up a strong case. They charge you with everything under the sun. So it was like.
So how many charges did you have?
Originally 31.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
Even though
you really did piss off the father-in-law.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And even though at the end of the day, the only thing he was guilty of that they found him guilty of was the forgery of his ex-wife's name. That's the only thing they could prove. I mean, with a plea bargain, they want you to plead to the highest, the felony.
Right.
They wanted him to agree to the felony, even though
they're going to put all those charges in there, just like you said, it's bargaining chip.
Yes.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was such an educational process. And here's the thing, guys, like from a spiritual journey, it's been the best thing to ever happen to me. I ended up spending 8 months in the Salt Lake County Detention Center. I was sentenced to 12 months, but I did my time really well. And but it it completely changed me, gave me a whole new perspective on life, on purpose. I was there. It was not easy. It was incredibly hard. I lived every day of it. 242 days, 5,885 hours. I mean, I was there every minute of it. But I learned what it means to be present.
Yeah.
I learned what it means to become the observer of my thoughts. I learned meditation, and I finally, before I went in, my dad sat us down, and my dad is still a very active member of the LDS religion, and just a wonderful, great man. And he said, and we'd had lots of discussions about spirituality and belief and Christianity and Mormonism, and I was just not having any of it for a long time. And I was an avowed atheist. I told him, "Dad, there's just nothing. You're wasting your time."
Well, and even he and I were experiencing some resistance where that was concerned, because even though he was full-blown atheist, I was like, no, I just don't really buy that there's nothing. And it seems so angry. You're just angry. There's just,
So my dad sat us down the day before I went in, and he said, "Look, guys, I know how you feel, or I think I know how you feel, but I just want you to know, to get through this, you're going to have to find something
higher purpose.
Something higher."
Yeah.
Right.
And he was absolutely right. And so
that it hit me so hard when he said that. And I remember saying to Brad, after he left, I'm like, I think there's some truth to that. We need to dive into something. I don't know exactly what it is, but we're going to have to get on the same page, and we're going to have to dig our heels in.
Fill in your blank.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Universe,
exactly.
creator, whatever it may be.
Exactly. And so, so we did that time.
So I started, it honestly started with me. I started doing a yoga teacher training while he was in jail. I was running our business, taking care of all of our kids.
We were still flipping houses, by the way.
I was
kidding.
Yeah. And I was representing regular buyers and sellers on top of running a flipping business.
We stopped the flipping, we kind of shut it down. We had
I had
three projects going when I went in.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. And you held the whole thing up.
She did.
Wow.
Yeah, she held it all down.
And
yeah, I mean, you want to talk about ride or die?
No kidding.
I got one.
Well,
that's just so incredible. If you can be an intentional person and just put all your stuff out there and just, this is me, and then have a woman who's right by your side, you can just overcome that. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, that was really where the journal was born, because I was like, I had to be very intentional with my time. Like, okay,
yes.
I had to time block every little thing that I was doing to be able to do it all, because I was still a mom, and I didn't get to see his kids. Their mom didn't let them come out, which was super hard, because at this point I had built a bond with them, you know.
Sure.
But I did get to go and pick one of them up once a week, because he had, was it 2 or 3 visitations?
2 visitations, yeah.
So I was rotating between all
Wednesdays
of the
and
kids,
Saturdays.
taking all of the kids to go and see him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Ride or die.
Ride or
Well
die.
done.
it was insane, but we got through it. But so I was also doing a yoga teacher training, which I felt like in the midst of doing all of that, I needed to do something for me. And yoga teacher training it just opened up this whole world for me of spirituality. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was going through a major inner work processes and going through this yoga teacher training. And I was sharing it with him and sharing the meditation practices that I was learning. And I was freaked out for him too, because I was like, man, like we've always been like fairly healthy, you know, eaters and stuff. And I'm like, you're just going to get shit this whole time that you're in jail. You're not going to see any sun. Like, we're going to have to plan out, like, you're going to have multivitamins, like, because otherwise you can just get sick while you're there the whole time. But it just, we had no choice but to believe in a higher power, because we started putting these intentions out there about how, like, even the night before he went to jail, we did this meditation where we put armor around ourselves, and like it was a whole meditation about going into a battle and how we needed to armor ourselves to like ward off, you know, all the negative energy that was going to be. And we started doing that every time we were going to court, because we started recognizing how the negative energy of court like really affected us, you know?
Yeah, you got to call back all your own energy. And
Yeah. And
ward off all the evilness.
Yeah.
All the ego that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we, when I went in, after the initial shock of being incarcerated, which is like all the sounds, I mean, it's just such a, like, if you've never been in it, it's just so foreign.
Surreal.
So surreal. And, like you go from the world outside where everything is, there are no angles. There are, the majority of the world is round and it's opening. I mean, even the way trees and leaves, to a very, like, everything is very block. Everything like is very sharp. It's a huge contrast, and it needs to be that way. Like I have nothing but the utmost respect for the men and women that choose to work in that place. And
Actually, Alec.
oh, Alec, yeah, okay, Alec. Like it's an amazing, like it's an incredible, like it's a hard place. I mean, it's a tough place. It's for everybody,
Right.
And so I just decided at one point. I can get through this, and I can either get better or I can get bitter. Mm-hmm. And if I'm gonna live this experience, I'm gonna live it the best fucking possible way, so that I can bring something to somebody else later. Because if I'm going through this suffering, Viktor Frankl says that in order to make suffering cease, all you have to do is give the suffering meaning. Mm-hmm. And he says that in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. So once suffering has meaning, the suffering ends. So I made my meaning, my purpose, to tell a better story, to be able to write a better story for me. Because if I can write a better story for me about how it's not about the hitting the rock bottom, it's what do you do when you hit there?
How you respond.
Yeah, how do you respond? How do you get back up? Batman was asked, why do you fall down?
So we can get back
So
up.
I can learn how to get back up.
Yep.
And or I guess it was Bruce Wayne when he was a little kid before he was Batman. But that's like that, and I decided that's going to be what I'm going to live for. My story will not end here. This will not be the end of me. And because I saw people that were in the cycle, that were in and out, and like in the 8 months that I was there, they were in, and then they would go out, and then they'd be back in, and then they'd go back out. And same stuff, and good people, good men, with reasons to, like, families, and opportunities and
What
careers.
was so cool about it is Brad would, because we were talking every day on the phone, he's calling me every day, and he started telling me these guys' stories. And a lot of them were, they come from families that are well off. And like one of the kids that he ended up getting really, really close to, he was came from a good family, went to college, was a snowboarder, ended up having, was it a knee injury, back injury, shoulder, something, and got addicted to narcotics. And then
opioids.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that took him down the road. The prescription ran out, and then he went to the next one. Had to go get something else. And then how do you go get it? And then how do you get the money? Because when you're high all the time, you can't keep a job. And so how do you do it? You got to go steal stuff. And he stole cars, and he stole other things. And then he joined a gang because that was going to give him the protection. And it just snowballed into
And
this.
so
But you could
many-
see, oh my gosh, like at one point, just a simple switch, you could have gone down such a different road. And by the way, it's not over. Like you can still pick that switch.
And what was so cool is he was able to see those men as like the men that they were, not convicts, not, the scum
Not
of
drug
the earth.
addicts,
That,
not gangbangers.
And it was really amazing because they started calling him the professor in jail because he would like coach them. He was coaching them while they were in jail. He got purpose through that, and then started writing these probation letters. What do they call them?
Well, so when they would go in front of the judge for their hearing about whether or not they're going to get out, a lot of times the judge would want them to write a letter. So I'd help them write a letter.
Oh, jeez.
And I am a communicator. That's one of my strengths. And so I'd help them write a letter, tell their story, but from an empowered state rather than victim language.
Right.
Because that's all any of us are looking for in like growth.
Right.
Is somebody blaming somebody, or are they looking for the opportunities for
Right.
growth? And so I would and it was sincere. I would have them tell me their story, and it would start off with victim language, and I was like, okay, but where was the gift? What did you learn? Where are you growing from this? And then, oh yeah, and so they would start using language of empowerment, language of like, I've got this.
It was
courage.
so amazing to see because even after Brad got out of jail, a lot of these guys, like still to this day, will message him on social media, ask him for advice, and a lot of them came out and like created their own businesses, like completely changed their life around. And it was pretty amazing to see, actually.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so I fell in love with, and I had always been a teacher, I'd always been a trainer, I'd always loved that, but I was able to shift my focus from thinking about, okay, how can I do it to make money? Where's the next deal that's coming out of this? To how can I really show up and really bless people's lives and then let everything else take care of itself? And so that's where where our boot camp, where our mastermind, it's just an extension and growth of that, of like, okay, where else can we show up to bless people's lives?
It's been a balance for sure because when he came out, he still had an $80,000 restitution order.
96,000.
So
And 52 cents.
and we so making a lot of money from the moment he got out still was the priority. It's
Necessity.
been the priority. Like we've had to figure out how to make a lot of money just to
get level.
Right.
with him,
Back to
just to be
neutral.
on the same, playing field as everybody else. And so it's definitely been a balance and a balancing act, counterbalancing. Like, how do we make a lot of money and still prioritize our family, be able to see, like, have relationships, solid
We
relationships
have 8
with all
kids
of our
between
kids.
the two of us.
Kids, yeah.
Oh, man.
You gotta,
I had 4,
you
she
gotta
had
make
3,
time.
and we have one together.
And I'm proud to say, like, we have really solid relationships with all of our kids, despite all of the alienation and stuff that happened on both sides with our exes. Like, it was bad. It was really bad.
That's an amazing story. Talk about owning your shit and then overcoming. It's powerful.
Well, it's a constant journey. I mean, owning your shit, like, where does it begin? It really begins with an acknowledgement that, number one, we aren't the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, right? We are not our worst mistake. We are not who we are at our lowest point. We're all these amazing seeds of divinity, like whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, creation. Like we're something amazing, and we are all always worthy of love. We are all enough. We are always doing our best. I believe that.
Yes.
Even if it was a shitty decision, what you would call a mistake, like literally at that moment, it was the best you could do. I don't care who you are, based off of the stories and the programs that were running through your mind.
Mm-hmm. It really was the epitome of doing shadow work and having compassion for understanding. We were able to both go on this journey of like back to the very first moment where Brad felt like he had to lie to be enough. And we're able to trace that all the way back to a teacher that he had that called him a liar because he took another kid's pencil in the
when
classroom.
I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the kind of work I do now. Like, I want to get at the root. Like, what caused that story in the first place? Well, like, why would I ever tell a lie in the first place? Why would I? Well, because at my core, I just wanted to be accepted. Yeah. And isn't that what we all want? We all want to be accepted. We all want to feel like we're enough. We all want to feel like we're just okay, right? But at a very early age, society, teachers, parents, religion starts telling us that we're not because those people are bad people, but because they had received bad programs. They had been told wrong stories about themselves. And so the only thing they can do is project it onto somebody else.
Right.
And so it's our job, once you realize that.
Making a choice. Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Once you've come to the realization that, oh, I'm not those stories. That was you, Mrs. Jones, projecting your own bullshit on me. And by the way, it's okay. I love you. I can love you. I don't have to take it, though. That's yours.
Yes.
That's yours.
Right. And so you take that. I'm going to keep going with my better story. And so, like, where does accountability? It comes into, okay, there's going to be consequences for those decisions. We can't avoid those.
Right.
Like,
right.
And so, like, me going to jail was not a reflection of me being a bad person. It was just natural consequences for the choices I had made. And
a cool story, though. I had this spiritual teacher that was really, she played a really important role in my life during this time because it was tough, everything that we were going through. And she was, I'm just going to say it, she was like a channeler. Psychic, you know, and at first I was kind of like, I don't know, but anyway, she ended up telling me Brad was only going to do 8 months, even though in his order, like his ex-father-in-law was like, no, he has to do 12 months, like no matter what period. Anyway, that's another story. But she ended up telling me this one time, and it just all made so much sense, that the reason why Brad had to go to jail is because he had to clear this ancestral trauma that, like, for all of his ancestors that did wrong and basically died and got away with it, that he was clearing all of that in his ancestral past.
Man.
So that
to pay the piper.
Yeah,
price had to be paid, and whether it was for all of my actions or I have kind of a colorful family history. What my great grandfather was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan in Atlanta. My grandfather was a gambler and bootlegger in the South. My great-grandfather fought in the Civil War on the side of the South. Like, I have got some colorful stuff, and I have another great uncle that killed a black man for like in front of my or killed his brother. My grandfather killed a black man in front of my dad.
Yeah, his dad tells this story about going to the store with his dad, coming out of the store.
It was actually a wrestling event.
Oh,
it was
okay.
wrestling.
Wrestling.
Right.
They're coming out into the parking lot, and he sees this black man in the back of his car and pulls him out and stabs him to death in front of his dad.
What?
And then gets away with it because
it's the South in 1952.
Right.
And it was self-defense.
Oh my God.
And my grandfather's brother was the sheriff in Fulton County, Georgia at the time.
That showed up and was like, oh, sorry, this guy was in your car. We'll take care of it.
Oh,
so I mean, is all of that mine? I don't know, but it doesn't matter because I can spend a lot of time worrying about like what I'm going through, or I can accept it. I can say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with.
Now what's next?
Yeah, what's next? How am I going to grow from this? Right. How am I going to see why this is happening for me rather than happening to me? Because ultimately, that's what we all get the choices as we're going throughout our day.
Right.
Like, you know, somebody pulls out in front of you. Well, how did that happen for me? Rather than why did this happen to me? And so it's a practice. It provides this
perspective because, like, you don't know if, you know, if that person didn't pull out in front of you, maybe you would have gotten into a car accident 2 miles down the road or whatever, you know. For me, when she told me that, it actually was super healing for me because I was bitter. I was pissed. I was like, it was very hard for me to, the morning that he went to jail, you know, it was planned. His kids spent the night. We had all of our kids. My son was 2. And so it was like, it was terrible. Like, as you could imagine, like, we're waking up that morning to go and take him so that he could be booked into jail. And his parents come with us. He has to say goodbye to all the kids that were at our house. And then me and his parents drive him into the courthouse. And we're sitting there and he has to go up to the stand and basically they read off the charges that he's pleading guilty to. And I'm sitting here listening to the judge read off what he's pleading guilty to. And I'm like, he didn't do that, didn't do that, didn't do that. And he had to respond, I plead guilty. And then they, you know, the bailiffs come and shackle him up. And I can still hear the sound of his mom gasping, like when he said guilty and the bailiffs come and shackle him. You know, she's like, and it was just terrible. It was traumatic. And so for me, I was so pissed, you know, I was just like, how, like, pissed at the justice system, just pissed at the whole situation, you know? And so for me to hear that, it did provide some, like, okay, like, and the idea that, like, you know, if you believe that you agree to take on, you know, before you even come here, like, you agree to the soul contract idea, right? Like, I'm going to take on all of this and I'm going to heal it. It's powerful. It's empowering.
Oh, I agree 100% with that. And I'm very fascinated, like, the way to get through something like that. Eventually you reach a point where you got to make that choice. And we cut the ties to the past. And you got to, if you feel like you've served your time, okay, now it's time to cut those ties. Now let's get one step moving in the forward direction.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a fresh start. It was a blank slate for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It provided that.
Yeah. And I mean, that wasn't the end. That was 8 years ago. And like, I still have, and still have to, like, remind myself consistently, okay, I'm not a convict. Right. I'm not a felon. That's an identity that I can choose to accept that can hold me back from, like, because I can, like, even in announcing the boot camp, who am I? Those thoughts still go through my head. Who am I to try to teach people? I'm a convict. Yeah. Like, I'm a convicted felon.
What if people find out without me telling them? Because he does try to, like, just put it out there right away. But he deals with this, like, what if people find out by Googling me? Or
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
we all struggle with the worthiness.
Yes.
As men. I don't know how it is with women.
Oh, for sure.
But the worthiness is always on my mind.
Yeah. Like, who am I to think that I can do this? And I've come to acknowledge and understand that is simply, however you want to call it. It's, if you believe in God and you believe that there's this good and evil struggle going all the time, right? Then it's the adversary. It's the thing that's trying to keep us down. If you're not a God believer and you believe in, like, ego, you believe, rather than your enlightened self, it's your ego self. It's that big ego that's trying to keep you down. Whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, or even if you just believe that there are principles of success and principles of failing to succeed, whatever it is, you're going to deal with that huge, the discouragement, the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the I'm not worthy. Those are going to be thoughts that are going to come up. And now I've recognized, okay, when I see those and I can see them, like, I can take the time. One of the things I started practicing, and it's a constant practice, a constant journey, is meditation. And it's only been in the last year and a half that I've started incorporating prayer as well, because for a long time I didn't even know who I wanted to pray to or how I wanted to pray. Right. But especially over the last year and a half, or since I was in jail 8 years ago, meditation became something, and it's a constant evolution, but it gives me the opportunity to see my thoughts, become the observer of what's going on. And so I can see, once I get aware of it, and I'm not perfect at this, so I don't want to, but once I become aware of it, I'm seeing those thoughts of doubt, I'm seeing those thoughts of not enough. Cool. That's great.
Yeah. Now you can make the choice to be the victim. Or move forward.
I know those aren't true stories.
Right.
I've already dealt with this. But cool. And then I can name it. I can say, oh, there's worry. Oh, there's doubt. Oh, there's anger. There's disbelief. There's a lack of faith. There's fear, whatever it is. And say, oh, cool. Like, I see
It's
you.
amazing how that takes the temperature down of what it, like, where you can point at it and say, that's fear.
Yeah, and I remember when I felt that. Like, I remember when I had this. I remember when I got bullied when I was 8 years old, and in order to deal with the bully, I got really mad and just went in a rage, and that's how I dealt with it. And it saved me at that moment. It was a good survival mechanism at the time. Maybe not the best as a 52-year-old man.
Right.
Maybe if I get afraid.
But sometimes.
Right, but I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, so that I know when I get afraid, I have weapons, or I have tools. Thank you. I have tools. I have strategies I can use to de-escalate, to see it myself, and so it's just a constant evolution, a constant work, and so how do I incorporate, like, going from victim into accountability? That's the whole thing. Like, that's the whole journey for any man.
Process all of it.
Like, every moment that you see, you're moving into blame, you're moving into shame, you're moving into judgment, you're moving into feeling guilty. That's just an opportunity to call it what it is. Remember, what's my origin? Where's the root of this? Now let's grow from that. What's the truth? Because that is a lie that we accept.
Right.
And there is a truth that's normally the exact opposite of that. And so I use affirmations to affirm higher truths. Like, I'm always enough. I'm always doing my best. I still have to deal with consequences. It's still possible for me to make wrong choices. It's okay. Like, it's just, I'm doing my best.
Yep.
Well, I think that's an incredible, and truthfully, you know, when you're picking a coach or you're picking somebody, if they haven't had the experience, by the same token, you're in a position to where one signature where you forged, that means that the charges were big enough, the money amount was big enough for you to do 8 months, which means you were doing very big deals.
Right.
Okay, so you have been there. You know what's going on.
Yep.
So kind of to a point, like, if you haven't failed a little bit, you know, well, why would I listen to you anyway? Yeah. Not everybody can come out and say, oh, it's been hunky-dory, and I buy houses, and then I put them up for sale, and then they sell, and I make a bunch of money, and that's
I actually worry about those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are people that tell this story as if it's just one constant win after win after win. Truly successful people don't win their way to the top. They're failing their way to the
100%.
top. They're fucking up, and they're getting up, and they're doing it again. And
they learn all those.
They learn the lessons. And those are the people I want to talk to.
Right.
Yeah, that's where the real lessons happen. Because what do you learn when you're just winning all the time? You don't really learn anything.
Right.
It's called being entitled, in my opinion.
Well, you win or learn. That's
right.
Well, if you're winning all the time, you're not learning anything.
Exactly.
It's very difficult.
Right.
It's very difficult. So, yeah, so we like to be very candid, and, like, even in our boot camp, we share our failures. Like, we still are making wrong choices. Like, I'm still making bad choices, and I'm learning from them all the time. Okay, like, our business as it exists right now is at its best level because of the mistakes we've made, the mistakes I've made together that we've had to learn from them. Okay, how do we keep getting better? And so our hope with, as we've moved into the coaching, leading masterminds, is that we're teaching from a place of integrity and authenticity, saying we don't have it all figured out. We've probably done a couple more mistakes. We've probably made a couple more mistakes than the average person because we've taken a lot of shots.
Sure.
Like we keep, Reggie Jackson, who's like one of the greatest baseball players of all time, right? Hit over 600 home runs. He was known as Mr. October, right? I mean, and because the dude hit 3 home runs in a World Series game. I mean, he's
first half of the
pretty
season.
Remarkable. And the first half of the season, like, it wasn't uncommon for him to hit the All-Star break batting .260.
All the time.
Right?
Almost every year.
But that's not what anybody talks about. Everybody talks about he's Mr. October, hit over 600 home runs, but he also struck out over 3,000 times in his baseball career. Like, he had to get up and fail a lot. And Babe Ruth, same thing.
Ruth, yep.
Led the league in strikeouts most years.
Yep.
And that's a baseball example. Like, if you go to fighting in the Ultimate Fighter, nobody gets out of a championship fight, or rarely does somebody get out of a championship fight unscathed.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, they're coming out of there beaten. They've taken shots. They've taken their licks. And they just have one more to give.
Yep.
Right.
And so, like, there's constant stories. Sports give us those analogies, and life gives it to them. And so, like, just keep finding them. Then there's great stories. I told you about Viktor Frankl. His was one of the stories that I read while I was incarcerated. It just gave me so much peace and courage to, like, that guy survived Auschwitz and chose. I don't know if anybody knows this. He had an opportunity to leave Austria before the Nazis got to Austria. He knew the Nazis were coming. He chose to stay, to be there for his mom, his dad, mainly for his mom and his dad who weren't strong enough to travel. He said, I'm not going to let them face this alone. And knowing that by making that choice, he was going to a concentration camp where he would most likely die. His mom and dad died. His wife died while they got separated immediately. She died within the first couple months. He had no idea about any of this until afterwards, but it never stopped him from his purpose. And his purpose was really simple. I'm going to help other men find their purpose. And that meant so much to me. And so that's one of the things I love about life is we get to find our purpose. We get to define what it is.
And I think this journey too, it's made us the type of coaches that I think we're like super triggered by like false gurus, right? Like if somebody acts like they've got it all figured out, I think you should, or that honestly that they have anything to do with it, because at the end of the day, we're just the vessel,
Sure.
right? And that's the way we approach everything is we're just sharing the information. We're just the cup. We're not the wisdom inside the cup. We're sharing the cup with you. And I think that any teacher, spiritual teacher or business teacher or anything, like it's just about that. Like if there's not this humbleness to it that like, oh, you're the big bad, person that it's all possible because of you. Like, I don't know. I'm just those people. I'm just like, I don't know about you. Like at the end of the day, it's just about sharing the wisdom.
Sure.
That resonates with me a lot. I like that take.
Yeah.
So take us there. Take us into how the boot camp, when did this start? What is the message and what you're trying to accomplish?
Okay, so it actually started because, we had the idea for a while, but it was like we were struggling with this idea of the transition, right? How do we transition into something like this? And we have our own business coaches that we had been, paying for and going to all of these other seminars and events and learning from other people. And honestly, what happened about 2 years ago is we got our asses handed to us again. Not nearly as bad as the first time, but but we had 13 flips going and interest rates went up overnight. That's never happened in history.
The pace that interest rates increased from into April of 2022 was crazy.
So immediately, there's a funny story to that. So we had just been like scaling our business. We were kind of being reckless too in the way that we were scaling our business because everything was going wild, like kind of like in 2008, right? Like after COVID, things were nuts. Purchase prices were through the roof. Like
we didn't
touch
all of that stuff, right?
We couldn't touch something and not have it turn to gold. Like we couldn't mess up. And so we were just like in this mode where we were just buying everything, paying ridiculous prices because by the time we'd get it remodeled, we were going to make $30,000 no matter what. And
or more.
I did have like some intuition come to me, and I had just made Brad a signer because we were buying, because of all of his legal troubles, we were buying everything in an entity that was only in my name. And so I was kind of underwriting all of our deals, and we had opened a brokerage, and I was like, okay, this is like too much. Like we need to rearrange these responsibilities. So we had just made Brad a signer of the entity. And so he and our son were in charge of all acquisitions, and I was no longer overseeing or underwriting any of the deals that we were buying. And I was kind of feeling uneasy about it. And so I went to Brad and was like, I feel like I should at least be seeing the deals that we're buying. Like, I don't like not being involved. And he did have a little ego come up and was like, why are you trying to micromanage me? You said I was going to be in charge of, acquisitions. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I feel like we need to start being careful. And he took it as like me challenging him. you know. And I was like, I don't know, like, I just think that, you know, something weird is happening in the market. And, you know, if we were to lose values, like there are some people out there that are saying something could happen and we could see values drop. And I even said we could even see values drop like 20% over the next few months. And Brad goes, that didn't even happen in 2008. That's not going to happen. And I was like, and it ended up being like, honestly, one of the worst fights we've ever been in. Cause I can honestly say we don't argue that much. We don't. And, but this day we were not seeing eye to eye. We were arguing about it. And, I don't know, when was it that it actually happened?
Well, that was in February. I remember it actually. It was in February of 2022. And she said, we could see a drastic downfall. And I said, Tiff, like that 2008, even the fall was gradual. What really happened was, I was right there. The transactions just started going away really quick. And I said that's not likely to happen this time. But it actually did. And we lost 15 to 20% value. Here in Utah, we lost, depending on the market, the neighborhood you were in, anywhere from 10 to 20%, like within 3 months, those values hit. And we had just we had purchased several houses and we bought them with one expectation of sales price. And our margins, just so you know, in the flip business, you run it at margins of about 6 to 10% of the sales price is kind of what you're targeting for your profit.
Right.
And so if you lose 10, 15, 20% of the sales price, well, you do the math. If your margin is 6 to 10% and you lose 15, what happens to you? It's not just your profit you lose. Like you start losing. Money. Yeah, you now owe money, or like you're losing your money or your partner's money, and all of that happened.
And to be fair to Brad, the flip business is typically considered pretty safe because of real estate typically is a slower decline. Like, and like I said, it's not typical that interest rates double over the course of, you know, a few months.
Right.
That doesn't normally happen. So, I don't know what it was at the time. I just had this feeling that like we needed to start being careful. And, that ended up sparking, like we went into a little bit of scarcity mode. We froze, you know, and we were like, okay, we got rid of the ones that we could, but it was like every time we were selling a house, we were locking in a loss. And it started, you know, causing all of this doubt, all of this fear, all of this like, oh shit, what are we going to do?
Kind of PTSD type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like legitimately. And so started questioning everything about us. And about 8 months or so ago, 6 or 8 months ago, we woke up and decided this is not who we are. Like we were kind of running scared and trying to play small again. And like, okay, well, let's just keep our head down and we'll just do enough to get by, and we'll we'll be okay. Like we know how to flip houses. We'll flip some houses. We'll do some other stuff, and maybe we'll go try some other businesses, or who knows.
And it also was this other opportunity that exposed where we were kind of cutting corners again. You know, because you learn the first lesson, but it's like an onion, right? You learn in layers. And so we had learned all these other lessons, but then there were these other things that were presenting themselves of where we were like, had again gotten sloppy in the way that we were running our business, and like getting caught up in the market, not paying attention to, you know,
fundamentals.
Yeah.
Right.
Really just not paying attention to fundamentals. I've heard it said that like an expert is somebody that never forgets the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And we had forgotten the fundamentals. And so we thought, okay, we got to get back to basics. And that's what we did.
We completely restructured our business and started focusing on, okay, what's your strength? What's my strength? And just completely like we had a whole construction crew that we had started just to remodel our flips. And so that was another mistake that we had made, because we felt this obligation to keep our construction company busy. So we were buying properties just to keep our construction company going, which is stupid, right?
Right.
And even running a construction company to not be profitable, to just service another company, is a stupid
Bad
entrepreneurial idea. Like you never want to start a company to not be profitable.
Sure.
Right.
You know,
businesses should make money.
Well, that is kind of why we set out to do it, right?
Exactly.
That's what businesses should do. They should pay the owners money.
We kind of forgot that. We're like,
simple.
oh no, well, Because we did want to do things by the book, and we did want to make sure that, you know, we had the proper license. We didn't want to be the fly-by-night flippers that were doing stuff without the proper licenses and stuff like that. But it was way overkill. It was,
It is balance and counterbalance. That's all. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of advice can you offer to somebody that's looking to get into flipping?
I mean, there's so many things, but I think first and foremost, you know, we start our boot camp with the idea of begin with the end in mind. Understand why you're doing this. Like, get really clear on your purpose. What are you doing this for?
Right.
And if your purpose is just to make a lot of money, that's okay. But like, why is money important to you?
What's
I mean,
the why
and
for the
money
money?
is important to you.
And it's even defining that amount.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then get really clear on what is the amount that you want to make. Somebody that was in the boot camp told me, he said, "Well, I'm really excited about this because the only advice I've ever gotten from anybody about flipping houses is just do it. Like, I go to these events and they throw out a bunch of stuff and they say, no, just go do it.
Just go out there and do it."
I'm like, do what? Like, we're not talking about going for a run around the block here. We're talking about a significant financial investment, time, energy. There is some specific knowledge, real estate knowledge that you have to have. So begin that way, and then if you're inclined, do a lot of study. Like, spend time, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. There are a lot of people sharing a lot of information. And I'm of the belief that once you know what it looks like and you want, go find a mentor. You can pay for it or not. It doesn't matter. I mean, we have a paid for mentorship, but I've coached and mentored a lot of people and never charged them anything. You will find mentors along the way, as the old saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so if you're ready to learn, find a mentor, somebody that is living and operating the thing that you want to have. Like I say, we say this all the time. If you want to achieve a certain physical result with your body, go find somebody who has the result you want. If you want to achieve something in your relationship, go get advice from somebody who has a great relationship. You want to run a flipping business, go get advice from somebody who actually flips houses. So go find a good coach, go find a good mentor. If you have the ability to pay for it, I believe pay for it, because you will accelerate the time. You'll cut the time. But if you don't, that's okay. Like, there are a lot. I love coaching people, even if I'm not charging them. Like, people call us up all the time. Hey, what would you say would be the first thing to do? We believe there's this notion in flipping houses that the easiest way is to go out and wholesale a deal. And wholesale, just really quickly, if you don't know, wholesaling is where you go and you get a contract on a distressed property, undervalued property, and then you take that contract and you sell it to somebody, what we call a cash buyer, somebody like us, that buys it and flips it and makes money on it. And you can make that spread.
Right.
I think the right way to do it is really learn how to flip houses. And then you'll understand what it takes to go and wholesale. We wholesale contracts. We do the same thing, like where we go and we get a deal, and for whatever reason, we don't want to do the deal. We don't have time. We don't have crews. Maybe we don't have money.
It doesn't fit our buy box.
Doesn't fit our buy box, and so we'll move it to somebody else, and we'll make a little bit of money, kind of like maybe a commission or maybe a small finder's fee.
If you can't understand you have to understand what it takes to actually flip a property, because it's a lot of work. You're putting in typically, 60, at least 3 to 6 months, right, into remodeling this property. Sometimes you can do it quicker, but it's a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of focus. And so you need to be, as the flipper, you need to have some meat on that bone. And what we're seeing a lot of today is these wholesalers that are leaving. A lot of times these wholesalers are getting paid more than what the flippers are getting paid. And it's crazy. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So go and go learn, but then take action on that knowledge, on that education. And that's what real knowledge is. Knowledge is the applied education that you've gained.
And I will say too, just in our experience, just going off of what Brad said about getting a mentor, for the longest time we didn't, and there wasn't a whole lot of mentors out there when we started. So we were kind of just, trudging through, trying to figure it out. And it took us a lot longer. And once we went out and got these other mentors and started figuring out what we didn't know, because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yep.
Once we opened ourselves up to that and we're like, okay, what do we don't know? What are we not seeing? Where are our blind spots? Like, things really took off for us. And so I would say the importance of having that mentor, you shortcut, it's worth so much, because it really takes you from point A to point B in such a condensed amount of time.
Well, just having the resource of reaching out and being able to, hey, I've got a question. Okay, I could do the homework. Sure, that's going to take me all afternoon to figure that out and read it, or I can, hey, what's the answer to X?
Especially,
Well,
Topher, when you're dealing with the uncertainty, when you're dealing with a real life situation. Hey, I've got a deal I can move on.
Right.
Like, it's cool in theory, like, to think about it, but once you've got a deal and you've got, like, we signed 2 contracts to buy this week. We do this all the time. We're making decisions to buy houses all the time.
Early on, there were so many times where we weren't feeling certain about something, and we would pass up on a deal just because we weren't sure about it, whether it was a construction issue, we stay away from foundation issues still to this day, but they're like sewer mains. Like, sewer mains would be a thing that it would scare us, and we're like, well, we don't know how to deal with that. We're going to walk away. There was a time we were afraid of meth, and now almost every house you do, you have to remediate meth. But you walk away from these deals just because you don't understand, you don't know how to deal with it. And then we would know what the house was selling for, watch somebody else buy it and make $60,000.
Yeah.
And we missed out on that because we didn't have the information or the certainty to move on it.
Just the ignorance, not knowing what the steps are to get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so get yourself a good mentor. Start off with, like, I'm a big believer in learning. Like, get yourself educated, and you don't have to go to a school. You don't have to go to a course. You can do that through so many sources now. Surround yourself with great people. That's one of the best parts about real estate, in my opinion, is you've got a lot of people that really focus on personal growth, on personal development. The people that I surround myself with and that we surround ourselves with, they view this entrepreneurial journey as a very spiritual journey, right? Because it is about becoming your best self. The better I become, the better my business becomes. The higher I become, as far as moving into my higher version of myself, my business seems to follow right along.
Raise the frequencies.
Raise your frequency, because truth vibrates at a certain level. Right. And so if you can get into that truth, whatever it is, I don't care if you're talking about flipping houses, working on bikes, taking a road trip, whatever it is, like, if you can get in that truth, that vibration is going to carry you. You're going to make decisions from that place. You're going to make the higher decisions where you're operating out of this true sense of love, of passion, of purpose. And things are just it's gonna be like a miracle for you. I don't know how it worked out, but it did.
And the other thing that I would add to that is, like, surrounding yourself with people who are willing to call out your blind spots and call out when you're not operating from that higher place, because that's the key to growth. We all have blind spots.
We need accountability partners.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
And so when you're dealing in that, fear, scarcity, whatever it is, having someone be able to, like, show you that and mirror that for you, it's an opportunity for you to step up and just continue to grow and continue to get better.
Yeah. It's tough to find those sometimes unconditionally.
You have to trust them.
Yeah, you got to have some trust.
For sure. That's why they have to be on the same path.
Yeah, and there's no one-stop shop where you go, oh, well, this is where it's at. I'm a part of a men's group called We Are the They. Jimmy Rex runs it, and it's a great group. It's been really great for me. There's a lot of people that have come in that it hasn't resonated with. I've been to other men's groups, and for some people, that group works, and for some people, and that's kind of my view on everything now. There's no one person's medicine can be another person's poison. And
Absolutely.
So the things that are working for me, they might not work for you, and that's okay.
Yep.
Like, the principles probably work, but the actual execution, the mixes, all the different concoctions.
Well, you really have to find your tribe.
You do.
We're doing the same thing with why we're here.
Right.
And finding the people that resonate. You want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals that are trying to accomplish the same thing that you are.
Yeah.
And that, like...
Well, and...
Go ahead, Tiff. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it starts at home in your relationship. And that's another thing that we're big on, is doing that work within your relationship so that you can be healthy mirrors for each other, because ultimately that's your
100%.
life partner.
Well, see, I agree with you 100%. But if I didn't have these guys back here for both, hey, I've got a problem and I'm clearly not communicating this, right? Or somebody to say, hey, you're being an asshole. Shut up. You're the problem here. You know,
Right,
and go and apologize.
Yeah.
Like your tribe matters.
100%.
Especially,
So true.
sorry, I can't speak to the female side. As a guy, it matters immensely. That's how we're hardwired.
Yeah,
we,
no, men,
we have to have our tribe.
there is something that like so just like a lot of spiritual truths that I've been, I don't want to say preaching to him, but that's what it's been for years, right? And then he joins this men's group, and he'll come home and he'll be like, so I heard this really cool like spiritual truth or whatever, and he'll like share it with me, and I'm like, yeah, you mean the one that I've been telling you like 5 years?
Oh,
Hey,
For
listen,
5 years now? Yeah.
Partners, sometimes
I'm
it just
guilty.
doesn't. It just doesn't happen. It just takes a different mouth.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
guilty.
yeah.
I'm guilty of the same thing.
Yeah, the instrument matters.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we learn stuff with a hammer.
Yeah.
Right. And she's doing it. She's like, and it's funny because this will happen. I'll tell her, hey, so a principle of meditation, right? This is a principle of meditation. And she'll tell me, whatever. And I'll go to an event, but she's telling me in her way, right? That's a very beautiful, creative, like just nurturing way.
Right.
But like it takes a brother to hit me with, yeah.
Well, and you can't say the same thing that I could say. Like there are conversations, Jared and I can talk, and there's like we're yelling at each other, right? And having that camaraderie back and forth, and he's calling me out of my shit, or vice versa. If I were to do that at home, especially right now, I may not come back with limbs. Okay.
Yeah. There's truth to that, and so the value of great friendships matters, and I really do believe, I will second what Tiff says, it really does all begin at home, in that core intimate relationship, because, and this is why, because even though we as men, we get to bounce these ideas off, I still get to be as vulnerable as I can possibly be with her.
Oh, absolutely.
It takes the greatest level of trust for me to really open up everything to her, and vice versa. And so that vulnerability is that's what teaches us I can really be seen. I can really be heard and be safe in doing that. And that's where, and then we get to, when we're struggling there, I get to come and say, hey, man, I'm just not holding up my end of the bargain.
Yeah.
What do you see? What am I missing here?
Well, it's certainly not an either or.
No.
It's definitely a both in tandem type of
Both
thing.
can be
Yeah.
true at the same time. And I think I see the value of like the brotherhood that I think is very real for men. But I guess what I'm speaking to is once you start to figure out how to manipulate that masculine and feminine dance with your partner, and you start to, it can just launch this, like, this path, right? This journey
divine
that you're
union.
on. Yeah.
It's learning the language too.
It is,
I've had to
yeah.
learn Danielle's language, and
Right.
I mean, I still don't know it, but I'm doing a lot better than I used to.
Well, yeah, language is such a key.
This could be a whole.
Part, yeah.
We should make this into a whole next podcast.
Deal.
Honestly,
Yeah,
Deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, on that note, guys, this was it was a pleasure being introduced to you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. You brought a bunch of wisdom. I'm with Jared. We're going to have to line up a round 2 at some point.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah,
But,
let's talk more.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. If you've liked this podcast, if you want to find out more about Brad and Tiffany and the Flipping for Real, we're going to have all the links and everything down in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.